crazy how as a dad you have to shift with your children, right?
Right.
All he says to me was, I love you. It really like broke me in that moment.
Yeah.
We had 10 acres and I know the first thing I did was like, Leo, you're gonna cut the lawn, buddy. I got a huge mower. You're gonna love it.
Hello, I am Tony Cooper, host of the Dad Manual podcast, and I'm here today with truly one of my favorite dads, probably the dad I've spent the most time together with our kids. Kevin, will you please introduce yourself?
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me. My name's Kevin Button. I'm a great dad, and I'm here to share some wisdom.
Yeah, you are. You are. And we have a very intertwined father history. I moved to Davis from San Francisco in 2010. You moved to Davis with your family in 2011.
Yep.
And our sons were in the same second grade class. And our sons who met in second grade are the bestest of friends, even though they've been geographically separated for a lot of their relationship. And to the point you and I were just like, they are in Japan, in Tokyo, hanging out together right now. They're 21-year-old men.
Incredible.
So we're a very intertwined family, and I am super excited to dig into a number of conversations that you and I have had and your journey around fathering. And so let's just start. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your family.
Yep. Basically, Trevor, who's Leo's best buddy, what are they, 21 now?
21.
So Trevor's my eldest, and then I have a middle child, my beautiful baby girl. She's 17, Ayla. And then my youngest, my fireball, basically a spitting image of his father in the sense of energy and even looks, unfortunately. But he's 12, so yeah, and I'm what, 48, and I got a 12-year-old. So, I mean, It's been a long journey. I'm still in the fire, I call it. So
yeah, that's a span. That's where when we were raising kids together, I had two, you had two, and then we were out. We tapped out, and you're like, we're having a third. I was like, you're a better man than me. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, that's my wife saying we're having a third, and I'm like, damn it,
And then he comes out and he's Ryland, and you're like,
and he's great, and he's Ryland, and now I'm like, I go to bed at night, and I'm like, fucking exhausted.
Yeah.
Like I'm exhausted, like, happy exhausted, but also like, I'm just going to be straight. I'm fucking tired, because of course my third one is like the fireball. I mean, he's the social butterfly. He's the runner. He's like on 5 sports and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I call him the little ambassador. So he's the one with the most energy, I got 2 introverts and then 1 major extrovert as my baby. So yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah, you're tired. Well, you've been parenting for 21 years. Literally, I stopped parenting directly. No one living in my house for like 4 years. It's different. It's definitely different to be in the next cycle. And, one of the joys of being a dad is really helping a child become the kind of adult that you want to spend time with. And so, I mean, you very much have that with Trevor. Ayla's about to leave the house.
Maybe. She tells me she's never going to leave her father, which is crazy, almost 18. And she's like, I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, well,
she's like,
she has it good.
Yeah, build me an ADU, like, an acre away from your house, Dad, that kind of talk. But, but then I look forward to Trevor being, all over the world. So I'm like, you're out of here. You're going with your brother. Like, there's no better opportunity than to be with your older brother internationally to learn that world. So that's good. But
yeah. And I was all thinking about how, you raised Trevor, obviously you and Leslie, but you raised Trevor, but then Ryland was raised by you and Trevor.
Yeah.
Like that distance, like really Trevor stepped in as that older brother / substitute dad sort of thing.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is like, it's changed a lot where when Trevor was, a baby, I'm a young father, a lot of ego, a lot of, just a lot of drive, I'm younger version, right? Most dads are, and you're pretty disciplined, right? No's no. And, you're on them and there's no leniency, right? And as I've gotten older, and worn down a little bit, it's like Ryland gets away with a little bit more. But then when Trevor's there,
Yeah.
He comes in and says, hell no. Even though dad may say maybe or this and that, like, no,
Yeah.
you're going to take out the damn trash before you get to do this or that. And I'm like, oh, we'll do it. And then take the trash out. And he's like,
Uh-huh.
you know, absolutely not. And
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, why are you so hard on him? And he's like, are you shitting me?
Yeah.
Like, you would beat me, if I didn't do this or that at that moment. And now Ryland's getting a little bit of that leniency. Like, he's like, I've never
Yeah.
even seen that out of you. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, I mean, that's just a perfect example of this, call it generational trauma or family heirlooms, however you want to reference these
Yeah.
behavior patterns. But yeah, I mean, I'm guessing we can talk about your childhood and your relationship to your parents. I know your mom. Your mom is definitely a Spitfire.
Yeah.
You were raised in a particular way that got embedded into you. That was the mindset, that was the programming. Then you started being a dad to Trevor. All that stuff came out. And then you had the time to consider it and consider the impact and who you wanted to be and choosing your approach. And you made these changes and you started parenting differently, but you've already
Mm.
embedded into Trevor that that's the way to dad. And so that's what's coming out. Like you got to
Yeah.
see it. You saw your patterns coming out already in your son. And what an incredible thing for him to realize before he becomes a dad is like, he doesn't have to father like that.
Right.
So yeah, like I'm curious about that whole connection, like your childhood, what it was like, how that formed your ideas of fatherhood.
Yeah. I mean, my mom was, she was strict because my biological father, they got a divorce when I think I was 3 or 4. Don't quote me, but I was young, right? So they got a divorce and, things were tense because they're both young. I mean, I think they were both 21, in that area. So young parents,
Yeah.
lots of things going on in that world, right? They're still trying to grow up as people. So, but anyway, there was that. And then a stepfather came along who my mom was always the boss lady, no matter what. There was never a man that came into the house that was like, this is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
She would say, this is how we're doing it. You're gone. So
Right.
there was a ton of protection around her kids. Like her kids were her life. No man, no money, no situation would ever take place of the love she had for her kids and the protection. So I got to learn that early on, like, trust, right? We don't share things outside the house. Things are secretive, like a lot of type of control,
Mm-hmm.
good or bad, however you look at it, but definitely control.
Yeah.
And then my mom got married for the 3rd time, but just growing up, it was super structured, right? Like there was just a lot of structure, vacuuming and cleaning. Like I think that was my mom's like stress release where she instilled in the kids, like, okay, things aren't going really great, stressful, whatever it may be, we're gonna clean. So I grew up a clean freak. And
Yeah.
so, but tons of love, and support for my mom and her always being there. And to this day, she lives by all 3 of her kids and is always there for us. Like she lives in New England, I live here. She's here probably every 3 months,
Wow.
whether it's from
Right.
my brother, myself, and the family. So a lot of dedication, a real strong love.
One thing I want to follow up about what you just said. So I know your mom. Your mom is incredible. She was the stabilizing force of your entire, childhood development. She was always there. She was strong. She protected you guys. She played both mom and dad role. And your experience is that like you never really had a father figure around. Like men would kind of come and go. And I guess I'm curious about like what was that like for you, and how did that influence your mindset going in as becoming a father?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. She played both roles essentially. And of course, I had a stepfather and he was amazing. It's my stepbrother, Tommy. It's his
Mhm.
father
Yeah.
who passed away actually from cancer, but he played a great role.
Okay.
I learned all kinds of different things that I can remember from him, but it was always my mom was the rule setter. And I would only know this now as being a father. I would
Yeah.
never be able to explain this if I wasn't a dad today, which was there is definitely a difference between the father's role of kind of setting the example or law, if you will, like the law of the home. And my mom did that. I never had like a big boisterous, father's voice, type scenario. It's also interesting, like where Michael, my stepfather, was a little guy. No offense, Tony. He was like 5'7". And, as I was getting bigger, really tall, I never really saw that authoritarian type figure as a man because he was afraid to kind of step over the line that if he tried to enforce something, it could be quickly negated, right? Or my mom would be like,
Mhm.
hell no, you're not making the laws. I make the laws or whatever.
Yeah.
And then my biological father, he struggled because he's like your quintessential 10 hours a day construction worker with the boots on. All he cared about was family. All he cared about was kids. All he cared about was the little home. He would work, she would be at home, and that was his world. And my mom wanted bigger and better, for herself, which that
Mhm.
world never worked for her. And hence the reason for their separation at a young age. But he was like that real family man. So in his mind, and talking to him as I've gotten older, that killed him because he
Mm.
never was able to be there except for every other weekend, right? Or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's just not the same. It's not the same enforcement. It's not the same guidance. You don't get to see all the little particulars that your father does. And I was thinking about this too, actually, like a week ago. I'm like, all the little things that your kids see you do as a dad, there's so many, right? Like just when you approach somebody at a store or at a register, how you conduct yourself, right? Your shoulders are back as a man, like you're looking eye to eye. You're polite, you're confident though. Your family's behind you, and then they walk out and you're kind of leading to make sure like everything's safe, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like all these things that a child will see, and that's really what builds this picture of their father figure, right? Like, and what they do and all the little things that they do. And I mean, there's millions of different examples that I'll think to myself, like, oh, is my daughter watching me right now? Like, she loves the fact that I'm a huge man, right? Like, and everybody in her class and all her girlfriends know that I'm a big man and I'm a
Mhm.
little crazy, right? And
It's
I drive a
true.
huge ass truck, and all the boys are scared to death to even talk to my daughter. And I love that. But that's what my daughter sees with me, right? Like, no, if you're going to meet my daughter, you're coming here. You're opening the door. You ain't calling me or texting me. You're going to ask me if you can go out with her. And if you don't, then get lost because I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But those are like the little things that each kid takes from their father. And I don't have a lot of memories of that, with my stepfather or my biological father.
Yeah.
It wasn't there enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So you filled in the blanks.
But taking, some of these, I don't want to call them shortcomings, but the things that I learned that basically were beat into me subconsciously as having a first child with Trevor, you're going to take the brunt of that. Like I said, whether it's a positive or a negative,
Yeah.
I'll say most of it is a negative. It's not a good feeling when you're upset at your 3-year-old because he's not putting the toys away correctly.
Like they're mirrors and they reflect you back to you all the time. So,
Yeah.
man, what were you seeing in that reflection?
Well, right away, like I'm a firm believer, like following emotion, right? Like emotion is it's the number one thing that I look for when anything in any situation, any occurrence, like I look for the emotion. How do I feel internally? Like you can't lie from emotion. So for me, it was constantly emotions were, not feeling good. I'd speak or
Yeah.
I'd say something or I would go after Trevor for whatever. And right away, it just, you're not in peril. You're not in line. You're not in sync, with
Yeah.
your true feelings. You love this little person, but you're bringing this adult previous experiences of whatever into this situation of putting away your blocks or making your bed or
Yeah.
things like that. I mean, fortunately, like I had my wife who's a buffer who really helped. And once I was able to put down the ego, as a man, right? Because that's part of, I believe, becoming a really good man or a good father or a good husband is really putting down the ego. So
Right.
entertaining and listening to your wife go, because they're built totally different, right? It's like, are you
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah.
And that helped me kind of come back to reality. Like, all right, this doesn't feel good. Like, how can I change this?
Right.
How can I be more present, by explaining, helping with the situation versus just, coming in with like a fireball and creating a lot
Yeah.
of discomfort.
And, I think the ego part of it is definitely something to spend some time talking about because, you're programmed the way you're programmed, you're fathering the way you father. Like you're seeing the opposite result of what you're intending, right? You're wanting this
Um,
little being to gain some understanding about what's important and take on the idea that that's the right thing to do and then follow suit. And then your approach is just making him scared or beating himself up, or I don't know what the reaction is. You notice this not happening, right? It's not producing the result that I want, but your ego would go, something's wrong with my kid,
yeah. Or it's
right?
producing the result for me, right? but not necessarily for the big picture. It's like I'm yelling or I'm, creating issues and I'm
Yeah.
being satisfied, right? By that reaction or how I'm dealing with it. Now I'm blowing up everything around me. I'm fucking
Right.
setting fire to the house and everybody's on walking on eggshells because, typically as a father, you the deepest voice, the biggest, baddest, you're usually the head of the snake kind of scenario, right? So
Yeah.
you create these environments and all of a sudden you internally, without recognition, just feel satisfied. You're like, I got my point across. I
Right.
did this. I could yell at him.
That's the
Yeah,
ego.
that's the ego. And it's like that part of it as being a young father, because we only know our neural pathways, right? We know what we've come from. We have
Yeah.
experience in life. We were raised by whomever. We lived in certain places. All these little things in our life we've experienced create these neural pathways that basically make up who we are in that moment, right? So you really, it's not like you grab a book and all of a sudden you start reading quickly about this is what I got to react and how I got to react or how do I handle the situation of him not making his bed in the morning or whatever situation it is. Like they always say, there's no real manual, right? So the only thing you revert back to is basically your neural pathway
Yeah.
of what
Right.
you experienced.
Yeah.
And now you got to decide whether is that a good way forward and how you handled it, or does
Yeah.
it feel good internally? And that's where for me, right out of the gate was like, shit, this does not feel good. I'm looking at a little being looking at this massive man of a father, scared to death, fearful, crying. You may have some screws loose in your brain if you can't look at a child and go,
Yeah.
okay, that's a problem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I'll just reiterate, your ego goes, it's a problem. The solution is I need to double down.
Yeah.
I didn't give it enough. Like I didn't break through. But for you to be able to see that and kind of go, man, my ego is the thing that's getting in the way of me being the dad that I want to be.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, I remember very vividly, I was really working on transformation, reading books, and, I had a little space in this house we lived in. It's actually in the garage. It was kind of like a finished garage, but I think Trevor was like 3 or 4. And I had just basically kind of lit into him for something,
Yeah.
and here I am working on all this transformational stuff. And it was new to me, but it was a start, right? Trying to make myself a better human because the emotions were telling me that something's off. Right. So
Hmm.
anyway, I handled this situation with Trevor and obviously he didn't handle it very well. And this was crazy. I would go into this garage, we had a door through the house and, I had my incense and my candles and I would open my books. And the way I would read like 3 or 4 pages, then I would go into a silent meditation. So I read a couple pages, I had this little candle lit, and then the door was right to the left of me where I was sitting, and the door opened. And this little being comes out. He's got some tears in his eyes. I could see kind of in the haze of the darkness with the candle. And all he says to me was, I love you, Dad. And it really like broke me in that moment
Yeah.
where I realized that a child's love for you is there irregardless, right? They don't care how big you are, how much money you make, how successful you are, how good looking or ugly you are, or how skinny or fat. Like none of it matters. They're part of you, right? They have a love for you as a parent, in this case, a father.
Yeah.
When you do something like that and you break down a little being, and it could just be a quick reaction. I'm not talking about, beating them over with a belt. I'm just saying, like, even your quick, short, explosive, no, I don't have time to that, or I don't want to
Yeah.
read that, or I can't listen to that. When you realize, like, you're this big, beautiful being as a father, you have this opportunity, right? With these little beings, you can create something unbelievable with a human being. And you jeopardize, or you basically you give up that opportunity, you give up that right essentially. It's a shame. It's a real shame that us older dads, it's important for us to tell these younger dads, right? Which is why I love being here with you, Tony. Like, you have an opportunity. You need to stop and be present. It's a lot easier said than done, right? Because we deal with a lot of things in our life as parents. Our parents dealt with shit and we didn't understand, when they came at us or they were short with us, right? But as we got older, we started to understand, like, oh, damn, bills were piling up and this was happening and dad or mom lost their job or, all the shit,
Right.
but to be present, right? To shut everything off, to really look at the little person's eyes, right? Knowing first and foremost, they love you unconditionally. They're not looking for, I love you because, I want money or food or like they love you unconditionally just for who you are. And when Trevor said, I love you, he looked at the biggest piece of shit, technically in his mind in that moment of how I treated him, and still came back and said, I love you. Like, okay, now that is
Right.
truth. And that is like,
Wow.
that's amazing, right? So as a father, how can I sit there and be like, yeah, I don't need to change.
Right.
Like my ego's dry. I'm great. I feel
Right.
great. I'm parenting great. Like, no, that's when it changed for me.
Oof. Wow. What a
Yeah.
moment. I started reading this really fucking great book that was recommended to me. It's called Battle Cry by Jason Wilson, I think. Just getting started. Incredible. It's all about this conversation about like how you're letting go of your past traumas and healing yourself in order to be this person that's not, trapped in a prison of your own past. He
Mm,
referred to children as these like little versions of your heart walking around.
wow.
And when you just said that with Trevor, like you're right, like kids only know how to love unconditionally. You actually have to get taught how to love conditionally.
Right.
Like it's
Yeah.
not a natural thing. And for him to be a reflection of love from the place of I love you no matter what. Like I love
Mm,
you even if you don't deserve it.
yeah.
It is like that externalization of your own heart. And you kind of go like, I want my heart to be like that.
Yes. And it's so true. You said it beautifully. I'll have to look up that book because that sounds like an
Yeah.
interesting read.
I'm in the first chapter and I'm like, I need to get this guy on my podcast. He like
Yes.
unbelievable. Unbelievable. One of the things that's really present for me when I think about you as a dad is yes, you've got these 3 kids and you've done a lot of work on yourself and you've worked primarily on mindset and you've also had such an impact on my kids, both of my kids for sure, but specifically Leo in the area of mindset. And so, you have played such a important role in fathering my son. The whole idea like it takes a village, but we all don't live in villages, so we don't get the benefit
Mhm.
of that. Buttons and the Coopers created a little bit of a village in which I got to be super close with Trevor. You got to be super close with Leo. And so, he'd come home after spending time with you guys and he would be parroting the mindset conversations that you had with him. My feeling was just like such joy, like in my body. Stress and tension left my body to know that he's becoming this person that I'm really desiring him to be. And I'm not the one teaching him. Like he's getting it from someone else. And I think that's another illness in our society is that we don't have multiple versions of parents impacting and influencing. And so, I
Yeah.
was just curious from your perspective, what was that like?
It was amazing because I will say I was probably in like the best place in my life for that stretch of 5 years or whatever. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just beautiful. Like there was
Yeah.
so much great energy. I mean, we had the men's group going on and we had our kids close and we were doing
We were
sport,
coaching
baseball.
baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole period of time was just everything was beautiful. Everything was amazing. There was so much growth. I mean,
Your life changed so dramatically during that period of time too. Like you became a
yeah.
different person.
Yeah, I became a different person. I think it was a lot of work, like we do personally, internally, reading a lot of books, doing a lot of meditating, really trying to find like my inner being, like who I truly was. You have these kids, at that time, Trevor and Leo, and, you know, they were such best buddies. I mean, we were so close that I think one of the biggest things was like when you have a friendship with another father and there's a lot of, synergy, whether it's mindset, how you raise kids, the way you talk, the way you deliver, positive thinking, because there was so much synergy between the two families,
Yeah.
playing that role when Leo was with me or Trevor was with you, like there was never any fear of like, oh my God, like what the hell is Tony teaching,
Yeah.
Trevor or vice versa, right? That's a rarity. Like that's a rare thing, I
Right.
feel like, in today's world. And I feel like, a lot of dads, there's not enough accountability of who you are as a father. A true strong man is accountable, right? They can apologize. They screw up. They can
Yeah.
start by, apologizing to their wife or significant other, and then, their children, of course, maybe shed a tear every once in a while, being authentic. Like these are things that as men, it's okay to do. I think our
Yeah.
kids learn that. And I think, that's really where you're being raw and real. And with Leo, I was able to be raw and real. Like things were positive. I enjoyed him being around because I knew this was another being that was going to basically be highly successful in his own way, but also be out in the world right? To be part of the bigger picture of the world and have an influence, right?
Yeah.
Bringing kindness. Like, if nothing else, just be a good person, be kind, right? Like, I think that was the basis that we all kind of worked from. Just don't be an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
be kind, be receptive, be open for everybody and anything, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I think our kids had that. And it was special with me for Leo because he was a sponge,
Yeah.
right? And then you get that child that one looks up to you, you feel that. I mean, knowing that somebody else's child I'm close with looks up to you as a second father figure, but trusts you, listens to everything that you're saying, whether it's indirectly or directly,
Yeah.
but just as a sponge. And that's the way Leo is in his person, right? And he's extremely aware, right? He asks questions, he stays engaged, he wants to know how things work, the intricacies of that or that. And so it made it easier because
Yeah.
Trevor is a total introvert, essentially,
Mhm.
and it was almost like Leo was very similar to like me as being an extrovert,
Yeah.
person. So I loved it, right? I'm like, this is fucking sweet. Because, I'm like, hey, Trev, how you doing? He's like,
Yeah.
good. I asked
Good.
Leo, hey, how you doing? Oh shit, this happened, that happened. Let me tell you about
Yeah.
this. Oh my gosh, I forgot to
I
tell you about
woke up
that.
I woke up at 8 and then
Yeah.
yeah.
So everything just flowed and worked, but I think with the dad, it's like, wow, you get a beautiful opportunity to be close with a family, have other kids running around. We always had that fear of parents like overstepping the boundaries, like, hey, don't
Mhm.
talk to my kid like that. Don't reprimand my kid like that. So there's a
Mhm.
fine line. I get it. If you ever have an opportunity as a father to really get close to other families and other children,
Yeah.
it's like, it's an amazing thing. I mean, if you're a shit father, then you
Right.
got to work on your own shit before you go help raise somebody
Yeah.
else. I mean,
Exactly.
and I hope.
Don't peddle your nonsense around here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good distinction that you're making too, because your father is your father, but other men can be fatherly influences.
Yeah.
I think it's important also to be able to, if we are supporting each other's kids, to know whose family it is. And I'm here to support what you guys want in your family. And I think you're right. Like, we had the thing about kindness, we had things about positivity, we had things about like standing for our kids' greatness, like literally seeing
Mhm.
the best possible versions of them and then doing what we could to bring that out. I think those were a lot of commonalities, which was easy to trust. And, actually, one thing that I do talk about a lot was such an opportunity from COVID, which most people, when they talk about COVID, it's super negative. But you guys moved to North Carolina about 4 years before COVID. And that was a big, big deal for Leo and Trevor because they were best buddies. It was a big deal for me and you. Like,
Yeah.
we were together all the time. And then, North Carolina and California are about as far apart as you can get from each other. I was impressed by how they were able to retain their friendship at the age of 12,
Yeah.
something like that, and all through high school. And then, when they were in high school, our school's a fucking mile from my house, and they were on their laptops every single day. And he was getting to that place like teenage boys will, where they want to start like pushing off against dad, like establishing identity by establishing like physical presence. And he
Yeah.
started doing that shit to me. And he was taller than me. He wasn't at
Yeah.
the beginning of COVID. By the summer, he was definitely not stronger than me by any means.
Right.
But he was stepping into like this testosterone surge and this dominant sort of thing. And I had no fucking space for that. I really didn't. And then I was
Oh.
like, you know what you should do? You should go fucking live with the Buttons for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, is that what happened?
because because one, it's COVID. You're on Zoom anyway, so you could do it from anywhere. Obviously, you guys are gonna be in different time zones. You're gonna be at school at different time, but you get to live with your buddy again for however long we all decide that that's okay. So it went really well. The urging was this, like, I'm gonna have to deal with this, like, in some way, and I didn't like all my ideas about how I was gonna have to deal with it,
Yeah.
which were like to reestablish my dominance. I was like, I know that's not the right way to do it, and I don't know how else to do it, but
Yeah.
what if you went to North Carolina for a few months and see how that went? And man, I don't know what happened during then, but he got it out of his system because when he came back, he was back to being all Leo, but like a more mature version. So I don't
Yeah.
know what that was like with you.
Well, I mean, we had 10 acres, and I know the first thing I did was like, Leo, you're gonna cut the lawn, buddy. I got a huge mower. You're gonna love it. And he's like, yeah, I will. This would be great. I could ride it by myself. I'm like, hell yeah, you can. I'm like, you got 10 acres to cut. I'll see you in 3 hours. And it was those types of things that I loved about him being there, right? It was just great. And of course, if anybody knows Leo, I mean, you put anything decent in front of him when it comes to food, and it's the greatest thing ever, right? So he gets so into food, right? So anything we made, anything we did, and it's one of my favorite videos of him pulling out a piece of bone out of like a rib, and it just pulled out. It was so tender. The kid lit up like a Christmas tree. But yeah, I mean, it was some great times. I mean, having those boys together. I mean,
Yeah.
being in like Trevor's world. But I love hearing the fact that, those boys get to a certain age and it's like, wait a minute, I could be alpha,
Yeah.
like what's stopping me from being a little alpha here, and it's Trevor always tells me, I've heard him say it to other people too. He's like, yeah, I'm not quite as tall as my dad. And they're like, well, you're, 21, 22, you're pretty buff. Your dad's pretty like, fat and out of shape. And he's like, it doesn't matter. There's some sort of superhuman dad power of strength, he says. No matter what, it's a mindset because he's like, I could be 30 and absolutely shredded and just my dad could be
Yeah.
nothing and he'd probably still kick my ass because it's just a mindset. Like you will
Talk about
never be,
mindset.
yeah. So it's so funny when he says that, but yeah, that was a good time when Leo came. I mean, it was fantastic. I loved it. I loved having him there, of course,
Yeah. But I mean, it was just like the ultimate in like trusting another dad to step in when I didn't know what to do.
It's amazing for you to be able to do that. But then again, we had that relationship. So, I mean, I would have no problem doing it, on my side. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, just having Trevor come out and visit you guys as many times as he does. I'm like,
Yeah.
see ya. I mean,
See ya.
and he gets more excited about it, because
Yeah.
he loves you to death. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
he just
it's
loves
a
being
lot
with
of
you and
love. A
Tammy.
lot of love.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious because you and I coached baseball together and had the greatest time, man. These
Great.
kids got mindset fucked all day long. I mean, these little like 10-year-old kids. I mean, we didn't care as much about winning. Maybe you did more than I did. But as like, are we turning these kids into like manifestation machines? And
Yeah.
so
Oh,
obviously the result of it is we won.
yeah.
Yeah, we won and had, some epic sports experiences. But I was curious, like you had a particular sports philosophy for Trevor
Yeah.
that you couldn't run with Ryland. I didn't know if that was you or Leslie or kind of what was the philosophy? What did you learn about it? What did you see the role of sports? Because now, I mean, Trevor's, a professional athlete and who knows what Ryland's going to be. Ryland's going to be, magnificent.
Yeah. This is a great topic because something just happened to me, right? That's really
Okay.
interesting. So Trevor's world, just a simplistic version, right? Was my wife, she didn't want a lot of sports in the beginning. I come from sports, right? I
Right.
played
Yeah.
basketball. And I mean, so for me, it was hard to swallow that. I was like, okay, like I really love sports for everything it does. I really want to get him going early.
Yeah.
But anyway, we did the baseball thing and it worked out great, right? I mean, Tony and I did this team and we had, in the beautiful town and we had, kids that had played some baseball and kids who'd never touched baseball, right? But we drove in the word manifestation. They're probably still saying that word manifestation and thinking about us.
Yeah.
It's so funny. We weren't out there killing them, with laps and climbing mountains and flipping tires. It was like, we're going to have a little manifestation session here.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but with Trevor, yeah, when we moved to North Carolina, he got involved in basketball, which was my passion. And he kind of went right into it. I mean, he was technically, they usually start around 8 years old in North Carolina, right? Like you're in the mecca of college basketball, Michael
Yep.
Jordan, the whole world, right? Tobacco Road.
Steph Curry.
Yeah, so they're starting at 7, 8 years old, right? And if you're good, you're playing high end. So Trevor, he started in 7th grade. So definitely, behind the curve. And he got acclimated pretty well, pretty quick, but we were still going through like the Waldorf school. Waldorf schools, I mean, I love them to death, right? They're great. They're just not turning out, Kobe Bryant's of the world, right? They're not,
Right.
it's just not known for athletics. So at least some schools. Now, Sacramento is fantastic, right? But that's not the norm.
It's E6 or whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, these kids are on the basketball bench, knitting sweaters. It's cool, but it's like, I need somebody in here that's going to give me some, oomph.
Killers. Yeah.
Yeah. So with Trevor, we went through that process and it worked out pretty well because, Waldorf, he was a stud, right? He's got 60 kids in the high school.
Yeah.
We play a pretty easy schedule. So, and it was a shame because I'm like, okay, he's going to have some good height. He's super athletic, but he's in this setting with Waldorf and we need to find another route for him, an alternative. But we wanted him to play, with Waldorf because he was building a lot of confidence as a stud, scoring 30 points a game and all these super crazy stats, right? But really, any big college, right, D1 or whatever, he's going to be like, well, who are you playing,
Yeah. Right.
So one end, he built a lot of confidence. So we just found another route, right? I started an AAU team, which is huge here in North Carolina, just so many options, so much travel, so much competition. And so we got him into that too. So he had two different roads that he was traveling with sports. And I thought it was really good for him, at least I thought, but then, all of a sudden he comes out of high school and he thinks he's a stud, which he was. But then he goes and he, gets into the big world of like, going to that 1 year in college and stuff up in PA, and he didn't play much and it crushed him, like, cause he had that mindset. So of course I'm thinking, man, did I fuck that up? Like, I'm a big guy when it comes to adversity and overcoming. Like, I'm not going to hand anything to you. You're going to work for it. But at Waldorf, like he shined, and I wasn't part of it as a coach or anything. So it just was what it was, but it really set a neural pathway for him. Now in the big world, he was confident. He was great. Could do anything, adapt anywhere. But in the sports world, it was just different. So when he got to play overseas, so that's kind of how it worked out, internationally, and he's still doing it and he's loving it. And it's really working out for him. He's really grown over the last few years because he's had to really work harder, and that's good for him. And then, basically switching to Ryland was, here's a kid that's like the opposite of Trevor, right? Like when it comes to the personality, like it's so funny. I always joke, but when you tangle up a ball and with the other team and they call a jump ball, I always say like this kid's got more jump balls than he has points because he's that aggressive. Like he has to be on the floor. He has to be diving and doing this and that. And he always guards the biggest guy. He's got no fear. He's kind of known for that now. And well, right out of the gate, before even his little Waldorf school that started basketball in 6th grade, he's playing for an AAU team. And it's a very competitive team. And then we get a sponsorship, right, from Nike. And, it's $100,000 sponsorship. And it's big time.
For a 10U team?
Yeah. Yeah. It was 11U, right?
11U?
I mean, it's big time, right? Like, and you have to finish in the top 8 to continue and maintain that check for the team.
Wow.
Playing with the best players in the state. You're trying to get nationwide rankings. I mean, this is like an AAU team on steroids, right? You're playing against Team Durant. You're playing against, the biggest teams in the nation.
Wow.
And the competition is fierce. I mean, these kids are 11 years old. They're 6'3". You think like, oh, you're reclassing or you're cheating. And then you look at the parents that are like 6'10", 7 foot. Your mom's 6'5", like Christine Crawford type,
Yeah.
It's just like, what? This is where I'm trying to get to here is that all of a sudden, I talked to the coach who I'm super close with and all the parents, and he's like, yeah, we got to continue to go after this $100,000 check and maintain it. And I need to turn this into a business in the sense that we're not structurally building and educating on fundamentals of basketball anymore. Like the kids have the fundamentals. And of course I'm like fucking 12, 11, right? Ryland just turned 12.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn, Mike. I'm like, seriously? And he's like, I'm like, you're going to put the word out there, your Nike sponsor team is going to be a revolving door. Players are coming in. Players that have been with the team are going to sit, not much play time. And we're not going to really be working on fundamentals anymore and all this other shit. You're going to go after the check. Like you're honestly saying this is a business. And I could appreciate what he was trying to do because he's been in that world and he's been working towards that and they got an opportunity for it. But I just couldn't do it, Tony. So as competitive as I am, I mean, I looked at Ryland, I'm watching, there's a lot more details to this, but like I'm watching practices and, rounds, he's coming home and I'm like, are you okay? Or, hey, we got to go to practice tonight. And I want to see, I look for the reaction. It was starting to become that doom and gloom. And, oh, really? I got to go to practice? And I'm like, fuck this. I'm like, I love sports, but no way. I'm not doing it. So I pulled them. We pulled it. We did it diplomatically and everything was great, and we may circle back. And now he just plays for his Waldorf team. and it's the greatest thing ever. He
Wow.
loves it. He's a star. He loves
Yeah.
his coach. He loves
Yeah.
the whole environment. And, but I think like as we talk about shifts with dads, with
Uh-huh.
different children or whatever, but as you get older as a man, things shift, right? Perspective shifts. Like if Trevor had a Nike sponsored team when he was his age and I was my age,
Yeah.
you will do whatever it takes. I don't
Yeah.
care if you're beaten on a day-to-day, level
Yeah.
on court. You're gonna do it. And it's funny now, and I told Trevor, hey, I think I'm gonna remove Ryland. I just think it's too serious. And Trevor goes, are you fucking kidding? Don't you dare remove him. This is what I always wanted.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, damn. I'm like, but Trev, I'm like, it's just beating him down. And he's like, suck it up. Because
Yeah.
Trevor never had that opportunity. So
Right.
it's
Right.
crazy how as a dad you have to shift with your
Mhm.
children, right? That just happened. So
The earliest memories of visiting you guys in North Carolina after you established and you had that basket in your driveway, and Leo and Trevor would be out there, and Ryland, who was like 4 or 5 or something like that, would be out there and like, I want to play. And he just had like no fear at all. And Trevor had zero intention of letting him get 1 inch of advantage. He blocked every shot. He made Ryland cry every game. I mean, Ryland's not afraid of anyone because he learned how to play against an impossible opponent.
yeah, it's
Never gave him
true.
an inch.
Never
Yeah.
give him an inch. Never gonna beat Trevor at horse.
Yeah.
Just never gonna happen. When Leo was there, it was great because then Leo brought in that second brother. Like, come on, Trevor. We'll let him shoot or let him play. So Rylan was like, this is my way in. I got Leo here to kind of give me some protection. Leo be like, I'll play with Rylan against you, Trevor.
Wow.
Type scenario.
What a trip to get that reflection back from Trevor of like the dad that you were when you were raising him, and you can see it like it's in him and it's in contrast to how you're showing up now as a dad.
It is. I mean, what's even more interesting is, watching my boys when they're younger, protecting their mother. Like any conversation that, I have with my wife or whatever, and we try
Yeah.
to do it, whether it's finances or adult stuff, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some voices raise a little bit, you get a little irritated with each other. It's all good. That's just adult stuff, right? Like it happens all the time. But both my boys, as they were, probably in that 11, 12 year, are like, don't raise your voice to mom. What are you doing, dad? And like, I'm like, you just don't understand. I'm like, I'm not trying to come at your mom. I'm just having a conversation. My voice is bigger.
Uh-huh.
I'm a
Uh-huh.
male, like, okay, I'm taller, I look more threatening, but
Right.
I'm really not,
Yeah.
so they would protect. And then all of a sudden, and I saw this with Trevor was like, I think he's probably like 20.
Okay.
He came to me and he goes, shit, I get it. I am
Hmm.
starting to finally get it how difficult it is to handle and manage all that a dad can manage. Not taking away from the mom's responsibilities, because we all know those are freaking over the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, he was talking to me about, dad, you run a business, you're managing all this, and you had to put food on the table, and you're trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good husband, you're trying to build us a house, or you're trying to do this, or and he just went through all these things, and I looked at him and I broke a tear because he's growing up to be a man. And as fathers, we don't really get acknowledged a whole hell of a lot. Typically we're the ones that are making sure that the wife's safe and secure and okay. And of course, the kids, you want to make sure that they're okay and they're
Protector,
safe,
provider,
protector. Yeah.
traditional. Yeah.
But it's like how many times, do you get somebody that's like, yo, you're doing a great job. I acknowledge you. You're amazing. I love you. I'm proud of you. I think that's the big one. The proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of you, dad. It really tears you up because you don't
Mm-hmm.
hear it very often, but then it just acknowledges like, okay, maybe I am doing a good job. I'm trying. I'm failing all the fucking time, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to, learn from those mistakes. And then when your eldest, in this case, Trevor, acknowledges you as a father like that, it's like, it makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
It really turns the tables of all the struggles and the growth and the failures. Like, you're like, wow, comes full circle.
Yeah. It's obviously been amazing for me.
Mm.
Incredible conversation. I want to wrap it up, but we'll do this again and
Yeah, I hope so.
touch on some different topics. But I want to just wrap up. you kind of went there a couple times in our conversation, but thinking about it through the lens of like a new dad, and the
Mm.
new dad not knowing what the fuck is going on, and making it up and feeling like completely out of sorts. Like, what advice would you give to guide the experience of being a brand new dad?
It's a great question. I mean, I think the thing that I would say is most important, like you said, I touched on it a little bit, but being present. I think it's a disciplinary act within yourself. You really got to consciously stop and be present with whatever's happening with your child. Whether it's the birth, of your child, you're present. You're not, listening for the phone to ring or running out of the room, like you're there in that moment, right? And then as you have a toddler, it's like, okay, can I lay on the floor and play blocks and be 100% present with no distractions? Can I cut out the adult life for that 10, 20 minutes? And I think if you're able to do that and continue to do that, through the development and the growth of your child, I think you'll be successful. I think everything else will fall into place. But I definitely think being present, Tony, I mean, they're going to know if you're authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can look at you and, when you're talking to them and are you looking at your phone? Are you looking into the sky? Are you present with what I'm saying? A child can see that too. And I think that's the most important thing, as a father, is to be present with their children.
Yeah, it's interesting as you say that. I was thinking about like what gets in the way of being present, and it's like just distractions, like things that aren't there, things that aren't happening, like outside your phone going off or waiting for something to happen. Like, we are, as humans, I think, world class at not being in the moment.
Yeah, it's true. That's
Fear
why it's a
keeps us
conscious
out of it.
effort, right?
Yeah, and it really is. And it's like, put your phone on silent and set a 10-minute alarm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whatever would keep you out of the moment, whatever would distract you, manage that,
Yeah.
because experience you have with a kid when you are present is its own reward.
It
Like,
is.
it's so valuable. And, and presence actually slows down time. Like, when you are present, 10 minutes can feel like a very long time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. That's a great thing to strive for. I mean, however present anyone is at the moment, like, we can always be more present.
We can always be more present, right? It's absolute effort,
Yeah.
effort. But
Go Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now.
yeah, great book.
I love this conversation. I love you, of course, tremendously.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
just so
Thank you.
appreciative of you to being on here and sharing all your wisdom, Kevin.
Hey, man, appreciate you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Until next time.
Until next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Dad Manual Podcast. If you liked it, please leave us a rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really liked it, please share it with a dad you love. I'm looking to grow a community of fathers who are ready to change the world, and I need your help to do that. And if you got questions or topics you want me to explore, email them to me at thedadmanual@gmail.com. I would love to answer your questions on our next episode. Until next time, I'm Tony Cooper, and this is the Dad Manual Podcast.